I have lived a life of polished boardrooms, expensive suits, and interviews in which journalists lean forward with that same curious tilt of the head and ask, Arthur, where did it all begin? They expect me to say something inspirational, an early talent for numbers, a brilliant teacher, some flash of genius, but the truth is far quieter, far humbler, and far more unlikely. For me, it began with running for my life down the wet streets of Belfast, splashing through puddles, chased by boys who thought a long word was an act of war. I can see him vividly still, skinny legs, uncombed hair sticking out in every direction, wearing handed down clothes that should have been discarded long before, and above all, a desperate, trembling certainty that being clever was a punishable offence. In my neighbourhood, big words got you into big trouble. I was 7, a small boy with a mind too curious for the place I came from and a vocabulary that made older boys narrow their eyes. My mother used to say, Arthur, you'll make something of yourself some day. But she said it quietly, hopefully, like someone tossing a coin into a wishing well. On that particular morning, I had dared to say that the rain was relentless. Just that, a single word that rolled off my tongue because I'd read it somewhere, sounded it out, practiced it the way others practiced football tricks. But the boys heard it, and in our neighbourhood, sounding clever was the same as acting superior, and you didn't show superiority. You hid it, buried it, crushed it until it stopped causing trouble. That day, I didn't crush it quickly enough. The chase was merciless. My heart hammered, my lungs burned. I ran without direction, just away, away from the fists, the laughter, the humiliation. I remember the sound of my shoes slapping the pavement, then the sudden salvation of an open door. I burst through it without looking. Inside was silence, real silence, the kind that feels like thick carpet and warm air. I blinked, disoriented. When the room steadied, I realized where I was. A library. A grand one, at least to a boy who'd never stepped inside one before. Rows and rows of books, piled higher than I could dream of climbing. I froze. My whole body prickled with the certainty that I didn't belong. Poor kids didn't belong in places like this. Poor kids didn't belong anywhere they couldn't pay for the privilege of standing still. I expected to be scolded or shooed out the door at any moment. Then I saw her, Margaret Andrews. She looked strict in the way adults look strict when you don't yet know what kindness can hide behind stern expressions. She approached quickly, her shoes tapping sharply on the polished floor. I'm Margaret Andrews, the librarian, she said as if announcing a verdict. Before I could apologize or flee, she pointed to a chair near her desk. This is your seat now. I sat because defying adults was dangerous in every world, but especially mine. The chair felt like a punishment, front and centre, within arm's reach of her lecturing finger. But instead of a sermon, she placed a stack of books in front of me. These are popular for boys your age. It was such an ordinary sentence, but my life changed on the back of it. I didn't read those books. I fell into them. I tumbled headfirst through time and space. I became a knight defending a crumbling castle, a detective chasing a jewel thief through foggy London streets, a pilot steering a rocket through rings of stardust. I returned every day, and slowly the small rituals grew: the reserved chair, the carefully chosen books, the sweets she pretended to dislike and always left for me. She learned my tastes, listened when I talked, watched out for me, not over me. It was more than kindness. She was planting an anchor in me, giving me a place to exist safely. One day I told her in a whisper how much I loved dinosaurs, how I practiced pronouncing their names. She listened, her stern face softening just a fraction. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon she told me in a tone of ceremony, "Close your eyes." I did. "Open." In my hands lay a dinosaur book so glorious, so impossibly perfect that my breath caught. It must have cost a fortune. She'd remembered. She'd cared. "I expect a full report when you're back," she said. I promised her I'd memorize everything. I meant it. I floated home holding the book the way a child might hold a newborn kitten, with joy and wonder. But home was not a place for me where wonder survived. Sam saw the book instantly. My brother had a special kind of radar. He could sense anything that made me happy, and he hated it. Hated the way I read things he couldn't. Hated the way teachers praised me. Hated the potential he saw in me, as if it was a personal insult. He grabbed the book before I even opened my mouth. "What's this? Think you're smart now?" He didn't wait for an answer. The sound of that first rip, God, I can still hear it. There is something agonizing about hearing joy being torn apart. He ripped page after page with cold determination. I would have taken 1,000 beatings. I was well used to that. But watching that book, that gift, that symbol of everything good Margaret had offered me, that hurt me in a way I never thought was possible. When he finished, he tossed the ruined pages at my feet and left. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just felt myself collapse inward. He had ensured that my only pathway to a brighter future was now beyond reach. I knew I couldn't go back to the library. The book was too expensive. My parents would explode if the library demanded payment, and worst of all, I couldn't face Margaret's disappointment. She had trusted me, believed in me. I stayed away. Days passed, then weeks. I was hollow, a boy-shaped shell, sitting silently in a classroom full of chaos. The mob jeered, shouted, hurled insults, but I heard none of it. I was too busy grieving the only bright place in my world. Then the headmaster arrived in our classroom. "Arthur, come with me." The class howled with laughter, but I didn't react. Why would I? Life was a disappointment served with punishment. Whatever lay ahead was going to be familiar territory. He led me to his office and opened the door. Margaret stood inside. I broke. The tears came with violent force, shaking me from the inside out. She stepped forward immediately, wrapping her warm arms around my slight frame, as if shielding me from a world she knew I was not yet ready to defend myself against. Arthur, she said softly, I'm only here because I missed you. Between sobs, I confessed everything: the book, Sam, the fear. I begged her not to call the police or involve my parents. Margaret shared several glances with the headmaster, who slowly nodded as if giving his approval. Both must have known that a solution would not be found in the school's published rules and procedures. They had to tread carefully. She spoke with a blend of solemnity and mercy. Destroying a library book is a serious matter, so to repay the debt, you will need to help me at the library after school. Punishment, mercy, opportunity. King Solomon himself would have been proud. Working with Margaret became the defining rhythm of my young life. I shelved books, cleaned tables, sorted returns, and in the quiet evenings, when the library emptied and dusk pressed softly against the windows, she talked to me like I mattered, like my opinions about books and life and the future were worth hearing. She never once mentioned the dinosaur book again. It had been forgiven the moment I walked into that office and confessed. Slowly, I rebuilt myself, not in a single moment, but in hundreds of small ones. The scrape of chairs on the library floor, the whisper of turning pages, the warmth of a boiled sweet left exactly where I'd find it. I didn't grow up in a loving home. I grew up in a loving library. As an adult, I built things: businesses, networks, opportunities. My name ended up in newspapers and on plaques. People referred to me as self made, but that has never been true. Margaret made me. The library made me. Books made me. When she passed, I funded the Margaret Andrews Foundation, which now supports libraries in the kinds of places children are forgotten the moment they're born. Every building we open includes a simple chair placed near the librarian's desk, carved out in honour of the place she once saved for me. I visit sometimes. I watch children sit down nervously, unsure if they belong. And then I see a librarian place a book in front of them. Something in them changes. I recognize that look. It's the look of a child discovering, perhaps for the first time, that the world is bigger, kinder, and far more welcoming than what they have previously experienced. It's the moment a life begins to change, as mine did when the library saved me.